Welcome to the How Did They Do It Real Estate Podcast. Have you ever wondered how people succeed in real estate and what steps they took to get there? If so, this podcast is for you. Your hosts, Sayla and Eileen Prack, interview top experts in the real estate community to share with you their real estate journey and how they achieved massive success. Our goal is to provide you with valuable real estate resources and to help you apply it to your own real estate goal. Welcome back to today's episode of the How Did They Do It Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Eileen Prack, and I'm back here with part 2 with Tom Zeeb of our negotiation tactics. And we're going to get into the specifics of his stack technique that he's going to walk us through and some examples that we can apply it to our lives. As we are negotiating real estate, we can start using the information he's sharing with us today to just get us stronger in our negotiations and how we approach different sellers and buyers and create these win-win situations. So Tom, welcome back.
Well, hey, thanks for having me back with the exciting conclusion where we get to really drill deep into some specific techniques. So quick, what we went over was creating a win-win and getting comfortable talking to people, what the problems of not being good at negotiation are, and the importance of flipping that around so that we do become good negotiators, so we get what we want. And I brought you through what the stack is, what defines out the stack, the strategy, tactics, angle, confidence, and know-how. And then it's the know-how and those specific tactics is what we're going to cover now. I told you that they fall into 3 categories. Those 3 categories relate to the 3 phases of the negotiation. We have to have techniques for each of those phases, but I want you to recognize that those techniques aren't necessarily just for one phase and not the other. Sometimes they're for all 3 or 2 or 1. It's a combination. So it's pretty cool that way. So move down 2 pages in your workbook. I'm going to skip page 6 for a minute. We'll come back to that. I want to give you the actual techniques first, and then you'll see how they all flow and fit together. So the first technique I'm going to teach you, this one is goofy, and it's my all-time favorite. And I want everyone to use it. I want everyone to practice it. I know you're all capable of it. And let me explain it out. Then you'll see why I think I've gotten a bit of a nationwide reputation now for this goofy negotiation principle. It's called flinching. Flinching. So flinching means anytime anybody says any number to you whatsoever, I want you to act like you were physically assaulted by that number.
What does this do? What does this do? Flinching when you hear those numbers.
Let's test it out. Eileen, say a number.
1 million.
Oh, 1 million. Yikes. Now, you're laughing, but how do you feel?
It feels like I just said a ridiculous number.
Oh, you said a ridiculous number. And why is it ridiculous?
I don't know. I need to ask you and find out why.
Yeah. So you're uncomfortable with your own number. You probably feel like that number is too high or whatever it is, that number's not right because you're uncomfortable with it now. Or because I flinched. I mean, I just said, say a number. I didn't say, give me a price or how much you want for the house or the car or the boat. It was just a number. So you pulled I asked a question generically, say a number. You pulled a generic number out of thin air and you're uncomfortable with it. Purely because I flinched.
That's why really interesting.
Each and every time. Every time you hear a number, do that and watch what happens.
It's so interesting because it's like you said, it's just a random number, but it made me feel in a sense like, was I not supposed to say this number?
Tom wanted me to say any number except that.
Yes, except for that one.
Really not the right number.
Out of all the numbers I could have said, I said the wrong one.
Yeah. The thing is, you could have said 5 and I would have done the exact same thing. And you would have felt the exact same way. There's no difference between 5 and 1 million, right? Your reaction would be the same because I flinched. So what I want everyone to do is I want everybody to flinch. Every time they hear a number now, flinch and watch what happens. Because that's a very predictable psychological response that happens with people when you flinch. You feel like something's out of whack. Now, I know we have some people listening, so you were able to hear my flinch. There was a lot of, wow, yikes. So there was some verbal inflection and sucking air through my teeth and that kind of thing. And if you're watching this and you're able to see the video, you saw kind of a facial reaction to go with it. So it just depends if you're in front of the person. do the sounds and the facial reaction. If you're only on the phone or only remote with someone, then you can still do a verbal flinch. It works just as well as a traditional physical flinch. Does that make sense?
Is there such a thing as overreacting a flinch?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. I think I have students get afraid of that. Like, oh, they're going to overreact. And now, granted, I surely admit my flinching is ridiculous, right? That's a ridiculous level of flinching. But I have students that are a lot more meek and quiet and gentle about their flinch. And you know what? It works just fine for them too. So whether you flinch as ridiculous as I did at first, or whether you flinch a lot more quiet and meek and calm, you'll be fine, or anywhere in between, which is more likely. You're going to be good because this is based on the science. It's not the art. The art of this negotiation is how we flinch. But just the fact that we're flinching is based on the science of it. And the science of it says that anytime you have any sort of reaction to a number, the other person thinks just like you did. They go, something's wrong. Ooh, I must have been too high or too low or not right. Or, wow, he or she doesn't like that number. So it's the science that matters on this, not the art.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome. So I expect everyone to flinch, right? I don't want to be all alone out there looking weird. I want everybody to be flinching. No, I'm deadly serious. When you flinch at everything, watch what happens. I will even go into a store where, in America, there's a store, right? There's price tags on everything at American stores. It's not like the price is unknown. And I'll ask, how much is this? And they basically just look at the tag and read the number. I flinch. And a lot of times they go, well, we have a 10% manager's discount. Take it. It's 10%. That's your money. You might as well save it. So you'd be surprised what you can do by flinching.
Just got to put that into practice now.
Exactly. Something to practice. Now, let's keep layering these things on. So I'm teaching you the different techniques. They're in a stack. A stack is effectively layers. So how we're going to layer these on top of each other is important as well. So the second technique I want to teach you is called bracketing. Bracketing. That's a kind of a strange word. What on earth does bracketing mean? Well, where do we tend to meet? We meet...
You mean in person, like a coffee shop or like a meeting room?
Let's say if we're negotiating, where do we meet?
Probably in somebody's office.
Okay, in somebody's office. Well, I'm thinking more, less physical, but like numerically, where do we meet?
Oh, in the middle.
In the middle. Bingo, right? In the middle. We meet in the middle. We know that. It just seems fair. Hey, let's meet in the middle. I'll meet you halfway. Couldn't be more fair than that, right? So bracketing means let's engineer the middle to be exactly where we need it to be. Okay? So if we, I'm just going to use a random set of numbers here. Let's say I'm trying to get to $250,000. At $250,000, if they say yes to that, I'll have a deal. So if I ask them, how much are they asking for the property? And they say $300,000, what do?
Drop it down.
Well, no, wait a minute. First I go, 300,000.
Oh, yes, flinching.
I have to flinch, okay?
We just learned that.
This is layers, so I don't want you to forget, right? So first I flinch at the 300,000, but if I'm trying to get to 250 and they're at 300, how high are they?
50,000 more than you.
They're $50,000 higher than I need to be. Great. So if I want to make where I need to be the middle, how low do I need to go?
50,000 lower.
1,000 lower, yeah. So when you're bracketing, I want you to put your target price to be equidistantly below their starting price as you are below your target price. So you're 250 is the target price. They're 50 grand high. I want you to go the same distance below. They're 50 up. You're going to go 50 down. So that would make your opening offer
200,000.
200,000. Oh, but wait a minute. I would never, ever, ever offer $200,000 on that deal, Eileen, because of technique number 3, specific numbers. Specific numbers. I would never offer an even $200,000. That's boring. And that seems like I'm just spitballing a number now. Well, you said 300, I said 200. I wouldn't offer 200, but I would offer 203,579. How does that number sound to you?
It sounds like you thought about it and you put in some efforts and some due diligence on coming up with that number.
Exactly. And you know how much effort and due diligence I actually did?
came up with it on the spot.
You literally pulled it out of thin air. All right. So yes, I came up with it on the spot because I just scramble the numbers up and make it something specific. Because psychologically, again, now we're talking psychology again, this exactly what you said. It seems like, wow, he's really accurate. And that was very calculated. And he must really know what he's doing because he made me that specific type of an offer. That's a predictable response too. So every time you make an offer, when you make that an offer, and I specifically like doing it with my first round, wow, it gives a gravitas to my offer. It gives a credibility to my offer to just use specific numbers.
So when you are stacking these three different techniques with each other, how does the flow or how does the transition happen between each?
Well, kind of just like we went through here, I would start off by saying, well, how much are you asking for the property? I say 300,000. Flinch. 300,000. Is that the best you can do? And see if there's any softness on it. And then at a certain point, I'm going to pull out the specific numbers and using bracketing with that specific number, I'm going to say, well, looking at the numbers and the neighborhood and the comparables for the different properties in the region, I'm able to offer you 203,579. And then I zip it and be quiet and just wait for them to respond. And sometimes they go, wow, that low? Or 203,579. How do you
so they flinch.
Yeah, they flinch naturally or otherwise, right? Not as a technique. And they flinch. And I just sit and go, well, we looked at the numbers. Now I imply some flexibility because I'm obviously lower than I need to be, but that's important. I want everyone to write this down as well. Let them bring you up to quote unquote their price. So I want you going low. That way they bring you up to their price because now they feel like they won. And that's really important. Always let the other side feel like they won. Don't worry, you're going to win in the end. But I want them to feel like they won. And they're going to do that when you've come up in price and they feel like they've got some victory there. That's also important. I mean, think about it. Most people aren't, they're not an island unto themselves as much as some people think they want to be. They have other people they're going to talk to about selling you the property or selling you the deal or selling you whatever it is. They're going to go and they're going to talk to their spouse. They're going to talk to their significant other. They're going to talk to their kids. They're going to talk to their parents. They're going to talk to their coworkers. And if it's just, oh, well, he offered you this and you took it right off the bat, they're going to call the person a dummy and then wonder why. And then that person's going to start to back out. But if you give them a leg to stand on, you're like, well, hey, he offered me some weird number like 203,579. I got him up to 250. Well, now they feel like they won and they were able to justify it in front of other people. And that's really critically important as well.
Yes, it's all about how they feel like they've taken control of it. And it's not a situation where they're out of control and they've had to be put or forced into a situation that made them uncomfortable. And then it's a lose-win situation for them. Correct.
And if they're losing,
we're not winning.
No, you're not winning either. So then it becomes lose-lose. You're not going to force anyone into doing anything they don't want to do.
Right.
They're not going to say yes until they're comfortable with it. But you got to give them a leg to stand on because a tentative yes, and then they go talk to somebody and you didn't play your cards right. You didn't do things the way I'm teaching you how to do. Then they revoke their yes and turn it into a no. And that's largely your own fault for not having given them a leg to stand on in that negotiation.
So it's flinching, bracketing, and using the specific numbers.
Yeah. I put those three first. Those are my three all-time favorite. I cannot think of a negotiation where I have not used all three. And that's every single real estate deal and quite literally everything else. I flinch all the time. I'm always bracketing and I'm always using specific numbers. And I'm always smiling to myself at how three relatively simple techniques. I mean, now that you know what they are, they're demystified, but they work every time. There's just almost clockwork consistency to this. But that's, again, because they're based on the science of negotiation.
So when you're going back and forth with the negotiations and say they're trying to bring you up closer to their number, do you continuously use those specific numbers as well?
Well, sometimes I will slow down. Like I don't find it practical to always move up at weird increments. So I start with a specific number. Then quite often I go very normal. So let's say I said 203,579, but you kind of come back and you're at 220. Well, I'm sorry, you were at 300, right? So you come down to 280. I might come up to 220, and I'll just leave it at an even 220. Then I get you down to 260, and then maybe I come up to 240. But if I'm at 240, you're at 260, and then let's say I use specific numbers again. Say I can do 241,856. What are you thinking now?
Like, oh, is that the maximum he's able to offer?
Yeah. Why is that the maximum? That must be all the money I have. Because I suddenly got very specific. That must mean, wow, he's digging out the quarters under the couch cushions to come up with that hyper specific number again. So I tend to use it at the beginning, and a lot of times my very last offer, because I find it kind of grounds it down to a halt. So that's two different times you can use flinching.
Got it.
Okay. Now you'll see some of that with another technique I want to teach you is one that many people have heard before, but I want to make sure you know how to do it the right way. And of course I argue my way is the right way on it. So it's called splitting the difference. Splitting the difference. Now, like I say, people aren't necessarily a stranger to that, but there's a way of doing it right, and there's definitely a way of doing it wrong. So splitting the difference is one of the ways you deal with an impasse. So let's say you get stuck. Let's say using those same numbers in that same example, I've gotten you down to 260, and you've gotten me up to 240. Now, we said 250 was our goal. So how far apart are we?
10K.
10K each. Yeah. 20 grand total, 10K each. So splitting the difference the way most people do it, they would say, oh, wow, well, why don't we meet in the middle? Is that fair? Is that cool? I'll come up 10, you come down 10, we're all happy. Great. Okay, you could do it that way, except that if I suggest splitting the difference and you agree to what I said, who won?
Of course, the seller would feel like you won.
Yeah, I won. But wait a minute, I just said I always want them to feel like they won.
Right.
So what I have to do with splitting the difference is I have to get them to suggest splitting the difference to me.
That goes back to feeling like you're in control and that you own the process and that you're not being pushed into a corner of feeling that you're doing what the other person wants you to do. Correct.
Bingo, right? Because we always want to have it be that way. But wait a minute. How do I get somebody else to offer to split the difference with me? How do you put words into somebody else's mouth? So this is the conversation I would have with them. It would be, wow, Eileen, you're at 260. I've come all the way up to 240. Notice how you're just there, but I had this big effort to come up. So it's just a subtle little thing. Wow, we're so close. It would be such a shame to have spent this much time together and not be able to come to an agreement. Isn't there anything we can do? And you say,
well, why don't we meet in the middle?
Meet in the middle? Oh, you mean like 250? Flinch. I might be able to do that, but I need to check with my people, my senior people in my office, my inspectors, my underwriters, my buyers, my team. You need to check with your higher authority. Now, higher authority is a group of people that have the final decision-making power. Notice that I said the group of people. It was the senior people in my office, my team, my inspectors, my buyers, my underwriters. I'm over-exaggerating the S a little bit to make sure you know that's plural, because you will screw higher authority up if you say, I need to check with one other person. I need to check with Joe. I need to check with Jane. I need to check with Bob. I need to check with Susan. But because the natural thing is, if I told you, I don't know if I could do that, I need to check with John. What would you say to me?
Maybe we can call John right now and get him on the phone.
Exactly. So now I'm stuck, right? Because I'm obviously not important to the decision maker. You move me aside and you go right to John. On the other hand, if I say, I don't know if I could do that, meet in the middle. Well, let me check with my team or the senior people in my office or the committee. Now what do you do? Well,
now you have to go and kind of wait.
Yeah. Now you're relying on me. I'm the one that has to do it. Now, you will see this used on you occasionally. And I want to tell everyone that it's not necessarily true that there is a team or a higher authority. Sometimes the person's making it up. And so you might just want to, the way around that then is to make sure you have agreement with them. You say, okay, so you are going to recommend my offer to them. You are okay with this, right? You think they're going to accept it? That way you can sometimes kind of smoke out whether or not there's actually anyone else to check with or not. That's if the technique's being used on you. When you're using the technique, just always make sure it's a group in plural. Does that make sense?
What are some of the vocabulary or terms that they would use that would indicate whether or not they are using this technique on you?
So you kind of have to smoke it out, right? Like, say, so, you have to check with the team. All right. Are you going to recommend this to your team? Do you agree? You think your team is going to like this? Is there anything we could do to improve it for the team? Would you like me to talk to the team directly? Can you get the whole team together on the phone or on a video call or something like that? And see it. You'll kind of from their answers know whether or not there is actually a team. And more importantly, you're asking, do they agree with you? Like, are they going into battle for you and trying to sell your offer to the team? So maybe if the team does really exist, great. You know whether or not you have a problem with the person you're dealing with. Because if they're not on board, they're not going to sell it to the team. So you kind of a number of things happen just from going through that process.
Got it.
I got one more for you. This
All right.
one's about wrapping things up. So we talked about having to have techniques to get it closed. Well, a test drive. So I call it the test drive close. Test drive close. Sometimes you get towards the end of a negotiation, and quite honestly, people just want a chance to think. They want some breathing space. If there's a group of them, or maybe it's a lot of times as a real estate investor, I'm dealing with a husband and wife. You got to give them time to talk, and not in front of you. They want to talk about the deal without you there. They want to talk about you without you there. And so don't be afraid of that. It shows a lot of confidence to just walk away for a little bit, take a break. So I'm very matter of fact about it. I say, hey, I'm sure you'd like a few minutes to talk this over. And probably not in front of me. I make a little joke about it. So I say, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go out to my car. I'm going to step outside for a little bit. When you're ready, please come and get me. Great. I've got one of my students named Mark. He's much more, there's one of the TV characters I'm thinking of. He's almost like Columbo at the end. Oh, one more thing. He always gets to the end. He goes, I left something out in my car. I'm going to go get it. And that's just a convenient way of exiting out to give the people some time to talk about it, some time to think about it, some time to marinate in a little bit. So why do we call it a test drive close? So you're creating that space, you're creating that time, but it's like a test drive at a car dealership. A lot of times they'll say, you're not totally sure you want the car? I'll tell you what, let's leave the dealer tags on it for the weekend. We won't run the paperwork right now, and we don't have to set up all the financing, but take it home for the weekend. See what you think about it. Make sure it fits in the garage and that your wife likes it, and then come back on Monday. We'll do the paperwork. But if you want to change for a different car, a different color, no problem. Now, when was the deal made?
When they drove it off the lot.
Drove it off the lot, not when they come back. The deal was already made, but because the car dealership had the confidence to just let you go, let you think about it, marinate in your thoughts a little bit. Come on, you're going to go home, put the car in your driveway, show it off to your friends and family, have the neighbors looking at you jealously, and you're going to what? Bring the car back? It's not going to happen. It's the same thing, pet shops do that with, kids buying dogs on a Friday afternoon. I'll just take the dog home for the weekend, see if it fits.
Emotionally attached at that point.
Yeah. What kind of cold-hearted person would you be to bring the dog back on Monday?
Yes.
So they run the credit card on Monday, but the sale was made on Friday. So it's a test drive. So I always want you giving your people a chance to test drive and back off. A lot of people feel this need to almost keep pressure on people to get to a yes. I don't like that, because sometimes I think you get a false yes, and then because the people caved under the pressure, and then that's when they try to back out afterwards or stop returning your calls or never sign the contract. I'd much rather you just have the confidence to walk away at the beginning, give them a little bit of space, because then when they come back to you with a yes, that's a yes. That's a solid yes, and you've got that deal.
Also, I think one thing to point out too that we talked about on the last podcast episode, not part one, but your background one, where you gave a the top level overview of the negotiation tactics is going into this, it's a lot about the mindset shift. A lot of times we go into these negotiations thinking that we have to close on this deal or this is the end of the world. Like we want this deal, but changing your mindset just a little bit and just thinking like, I want a deal, but it doesn't have to be this particular one.
Bingo. Yeah, that's confidence. Because think about how desperate you come across if I have to have this deal. I have to make this work. You're not coming into it the right mindset. You're not in the right frame. Yes, it's important to do deals. It's just not important to do any deal specifically. And you've got to convince yourself of that.
Right.
Which you do from practicing. Because the more you get used to being rejected, the more you get used to recognizing that not every deal comes to a yes, not every deal works out, the more quietly confident you'll get. And then you'll be able to move ahead and negotiate the ones that can become yeses in the yeses.
Absolutely, Tom. That's fantastic.
Now, let me show you. I'm going to tie all this together. So everything we've talked about, both in part one of this, well, in the podcast to begin with, part one of this video, and part two, I want to tie it all together, and we'll do that there on page 6 of the workbook. This is the flow. How does all of this come together? Well, there's 3 major sections. We talked about that. You have techniques to get the ball rolling. Then you have techniques to get the price down. Then you have techniques to get it closed. So, how does that all look, and where do you spend time on that? So for each of these, there's basically 3 sections for each one. So here's what I'm after. When you're getting the ball rolling, that's going to start quite simply by learning how to open the conversation, get them talking, break the ice, start using some of the initial techniques. How you doing? Why are you selling? Tell me about the property. What are some of the financials? Why do you need to sell? When do you need to sell by? Right? Easy questions. Get the ball rolling. Open that conversation. And number 2, I can't stress this enough. Learn to listen. Man, the number of times I've heard that over the years. Learn to listen. The better listener you become, you shouldn't be over talking everybody. You should be listening. You ask a question and then zip it. Let them respond to you because they're going to give you the answers. They're going to give you everything you need to know, but you got to learn to listen. So they're going to tell you the issues and tell you what the problems are. You need to listen to that. And because when you listen and comprehend what they're saying, you can reflect that back to them. And I don't know about you, Eileen, but isn't it really impressive when somebody's been listening to you and can repeat what you said? Don't you feel kind of flattered with the person?
Of course, because it means that your words have some weight to them, that there's not just going through one ear and out the other.
Yes. So this person is different. They actually listen to me. Now, I'm assuming most of us are in some sort of competitive environment. We all have competitors. There's other people out there to get the same things that we're after. Well, if you want to set yourself apart from the crowd, learn to listen, because that person that listens becomes the only logical choice that person wants to do business with. Listen. And then as we're listening, I want you to dig deeper each and every time. So yes, you're listening and they give you an answer. You say, wonderful. Oh, you're selling the property because you inherited it from your grandmother who passed away at 97 years of age. Oh, awesome. Well, I'm sorry to hear about that, but what can I do to help you? Well, when do you need to sell it by? What are you going to do if you don't sell it? I keep digging questions that dig for more and more information. When do you need to have it sold by? Have you tried listing it? Did it work? What do you think's wrong? All these, any kind of question they ask you, dig for more information. Oh, that's cool. Tell me more. Interesting. Tell me more. Tell me more. Tell me more. Tell me more. We're constantly digging because it's like an onion. There's always another layer, and you can keep peeling off that layer of the onion and you keep getting more and more to the core where the real information is. When you ask the questions the first time, people give you a very superficial answer. But when you reflect it back to them and say, well, that's great, tell me more, or you force them to take another layer of that onion off, now we're starting to get down to the good stuff. Does that make sense?
Yes. And so, Tom, question for you. What if you're talking to someone who's already built up a wall and they are resistant to your digging? And so they're giving you short, curt answers as you're trying to dig. How far do you dig, or how do you start opening them up to be open to some more questions and to opening up a little bit more about why are they selling and getting them to talk?
Yeah, excellent. So that's a great question. One thing I do is sometimes I apologize right off the bat. I'll say, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to be so personal, or I don't mean to make you uncomfortable. The reason I'm asking is, like, some people, that happens a lot. I ask about their mortgage balance. Oh, why would I tell you my mortgage balance? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. But one of the reasons I ask is because one of the ways we can buy property is by taking over an existing mortgage. And sometimes if I do that, I can give you a higher price. That's why I asked. And they go, oh, you want to give me more money? And oh, okay. So it can break down that resistance by just explaining what you're doing. So that's one of the techniques I use.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Then as you keep digging, when they tell you things, now is the point where we're going to be trying to get the price down more and more. Well, that starts off by challenging what they say. So you don't accept what they say right out of the bat. You challenge it. Oh, I see. You came up with that price because the guy down the street sold his property for the same amount of money. You might want to challenge that, right? And you go, oh, are you sure? Was it the same size house? Because I'm not seeing it. So there's kind of a little pushback on that. Or, oh, you think that you're going to have your uncle out of this property within a week? You want to challenge that a little bit. Does that really make sense? Anything they say, challenge it to keep getting that price down and down and down. That people feel awkward about challenging somebody on what they say. I want you to not view this as confrontational, but challenging. Not view it as confrontational, which is negative, but challenging, which is actually helpful. Most people have never been pushed to come up with an answer. Like, what are you going to do if you don't sell this property? Where are you going to go? What are you going to do if you don't get the money to spend on whatever it is they need to spend on? Maybe they're going to put a kid through school, or maybe they need to start a new life in a different part of the country, or maybe they need to follow that job. But no one's pushed them to say, well, what happens if that doesn't work out? And I will argue that you are doing them a favor, a big favor, by forcing them to think about what happens if this doesn't work out. Because that's when they start to think really deep, and they come to an emotional reckoning with what it is that they say that they want. And you're the one to do that for them. They're grateful to you for it. Even if it's a little uncomfortable being challenged at first, they realize that, wait a minute, this person brought these really good answers out of me. And I deal with people facing foreclosure, and they will wait until the very last minute because they think some magic, wizard's going to come by and just, wave a magic wand and make all their problems go away. Well, that's a big problem. That's why they wound up filing bankruptcy at the last minute, because the magic magician never came. But it's also because anyone they talked to up to that point never challenged them. Never said, wait a minute, what if this doesn't work out? Do you really think that's going to happen? What are you going to do? So I think it's important to challenge people, which leads into pushing. You always want to be pushing. Push, but not pushing. Pushing is negative, but push on their answers. So that's how I handle those things, and making sure that I'm challenging what they say, and I'm pushing the price down lower, even lower than you think they're going to go.
Can you provide a little bit more context between the difference between challenging them and pushing on their answers?
Sure. Challenging them is if you ask them, why do you need to sell? Well, I need to sell because I lost my job and I've decided that I want to pack up and move back where I'm from, but I don't have any money to do that now that I don't have a job. Then you could say, well, okay, so you don't have a job and you want to move back home, but you can't do it until you sell this property. So what have you done so far to try to sell it? Oh, I listed with an agent, but it sat there for 4 months and didn't sell. You go, okay, so did you try lowering the price? No, you didn't. So you keep challenging. So do you think there might be a problem with the price? I mean, which is obvious to us, right? But to them, it's all right. Well, yeah, if you really want this problem solved, then you might need to start to get realistic about the price now, right? There's a little bit of push in there, a little bit of challenge. And I'm not accepting, challenging is not accepting what they say right out the gate. It's pushing back on it. And then pushing in this general sense is making sure that you keep pushing that price down, using the techniques to bring the price down even lower than you think they'll go.
Got it. All right.
So it's challenging, pushing, and the direction we're always heading. And what I want you to keep in mind is that this is always lower, lower, lower is the direction we're trying to get the price from them. And people will go lower than you think at first. So I guess the best way, Eileen, to go through this one is to think about what would you regret? So like that's a fantastic microphone you're using, Eileen. I'll tell you what, pack that thing up. I'll give you $5,000 for it.
Wow.
Yes or no?
Yeah, absolutely. You can take it.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Now, wait a minute. Well, all the listeners out there are going, okay, he gave you $5,000 for the microphone. That's great. But what are you thinking?
Why is he paying me $5,000 for this microphone?
Yes, you're doubting it. Number one. What's your second thought?
Is he really going to follow through with it?
Yeah. And I bet there's people out there also going, well, wait a minute. He said $5,000. She said yes right away. How much more would he have offered?
Right. That's true.
Since there was no challenge, there was no push, you accepted what I wanted pretty much right out of the gate. You might have left money on the table. I might have been willing to give $6,000.
Oh, so maybe what I should have done was like $5,000.
Yes. Yes, I said a number and you didn't flinch.
That was a test and I failed.
That's all right. This is how you learn. It's practice, practice, practice. So yeah, you didn't challenge me back, right? There was no kind of dig. There was no push, or there was no opportunity to say, hey, would he have gone higher? Mm-hmm. Just like I didn't have to push you any different either, because you accepted my offer right out of the gate. So one of the hidden lessons in that is never say yes to the first offer, because you're putting those thoughts in someone else's mind. Like when I said yes to your first offer, your first thought was, oh, there must be something wrong here. Is the microphone worth more? Is it worth less? Maybe he won't follow through. Maybe he's not for real. Maybe he's not serious. And I wonder how much more I could have gotten for the microphone.
That's very true. Yep.
Yeah. All those thoughts are natural to people. And I put those thoughts into your head by jumping at your first offer, and vice versa, right? You jumped at my first offer. I thought the same thing. I wonder how much more. So never jump at the first offer. That's really important. That's why we're always challenging, always pushing, and always going lower than we expect to go. Look, even when I was thinking of how to phrase that question, I said, you know what? I'll offer $5,000 for the mic. She's not going to say no to that. But what if I had said 500? That might be right around the cost of it. I don't know.
Right. I think also because the perception of the value of the microphone, you're like, well, there's no way I'm going to get $5,000 for this microphone.
Yeah. So take it.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah. So yes, you got $5,000 for a mic that you didn't think was worth that. So you won, but how much more could you have won is what we'll never know.
True. Yes.
Yeah. So you want to be careful about that. Then as you cross this threshold again, and you come into getting the deal closed, there will become a point where we are reaching for compromise. We're reaching for that solution. We're reaching for agreement. We're reaching for them to say yes to us. So you're kind of there. You've gotten in close. You're either at your number or you're pretty darn close. You want to reach for that agreement, reach for that compromise, and come to agreement. An agreement means they're saying yes. Some of the most exciting things in life happen after people say yes to you. So yeah, you want to get them saying yes to you, because awesome. All right. So great. Now they agree. And now we can finally close the deal. So in real estate, when they say yes, they have to sign a contract. And that's what we're closing them with. So the deal is closed. We started by opening. We finished by closing. We get them to say yes. We get them to sign a contract. These are the steps of the process. But I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to draw on this and make it messy. Here's what's going to happen. You are generally going through this framework, going through this model from the left side to the right side, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But it's not a straight line through. You're going to come in and you're going to spend a lot of time kind of circling around that middle area before you finally exit out. So you're going to kind of go around and around and around. That's why that middle area got bigger. You're going to spend more time working to get the price down, challenging, pushing, getting that price lower, lower, lower. So it's not a straight line across. You're going to be going around and around for a little bit in that middle section. And that's good. And then you'll get a sense of, okay, when's the appropriate time to start to reach for agreement, reach for that compromise and make it happen.
This is where the dance comes in.
Yep. So that is the negotiation stack. So do you find that helpful?
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
Viewers and listeners find that helpful?
Absolutely, Tom. This was fantastic.
Do you think you and your followers are better negotiators for knowing this?
Absolutely, because a lot of times you don't have the framework of how to negotiate or how to approach these types of conversations. And then now I'm a very visual person. So to be able to see the visualizations and the step processes and how things kind of flow, and it's not really a straight line. You kind of go back and forth between it, creating the win-win situations, having the other opposite party feel like they're in control of it. And then creating a really good experience between both people really creates that good opportunity at the end. And then where you guys can come to a terms and agreements and you guys can both win in the situations.
Yeah. Yeah. All of it, right? There's a lot. We've covered a lot of ground.
We did. No, I appreciate that so much, Tom. Thank you so much for sharing with all of us on this.
My pleasure.
So Tom, one last thing. I have to ask also, where can our listeners find out more about you and where can they reach out?
Sure. Go to tomzeeb.com, TOMZ as in zebra, EEB as in boy.com. And that's got my podcast there. And there's a lot of episodes that talk about negotiations. If you want more training on that or anything else involved in that, go to tomzeeb.com or you can email me. It's tom@tomzeeb.com. I'd love to meet you.
Absolutely. Tom, thank you so much for all your time. Definitely found this super valuable.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Eileen. Appreciate it.
And thank you for listening to our podcast today, brought to you by Bonavest Capital. We would really appreciate it if you can go to iTunes right now and leave a rating and written review. Also, please don't forget to subscribe so you can always get the latest episodes. You can also connect with us on Facebook, How Did They Do It Real Estate. We'd love to hear your feedback and any topics that you're interested in for future episodes. Lastly, to learn more about us, you can go to bonavestcapital.com and fill out the Contact Us page so you can speak to us directly. Nothing on the show should be considered as specific personal advice. Please consult your legal, tax, and real estate professionals for individualized advice.